Greetings to you, CBC. Welcome to this week's Sunday warm-up. As always, this video is for the intended purpose of getting ourselves ready and prepared for this Sunday's message so that we can come ready to hear the Word of God, warmed up, prayed up, having read the scriptures and gone through the notes ourselves. So this week we continue in our First Thessalonians series. Last week we really kind of set the groundwork for some of the background of the letter, why it was being written, what was the purpose of this letter? What was how was the church itself established? So if you didn't get a chance to take a look at those notes, go through that sermon, certainly go back and do that. Again, just as a review, go back through Acts 16 and 17, and we'll see again, Paul himself had just come out of a very difficult experience in Philippi. His experience in Thessalonica was very difficult. The church was going through a very difficult time, and so he found himself wondering about this group of folks that he really just loved. They impacted, it seems, his life. He impacted their lives. The Spirit of God was moving powerfully in this really short period of time, 3 to 4 weeks. And Paul is now wondering, has been wondering, seems to be worked up about it, and sent Timothy back to see how things were going. Timothy reports that things are going wonderful. This church is thriving in the midst of a very difficult season, and so we saw that as well in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, 17 through chapter 3. This week we'll start working our way through from chapter 1 now. Again, keeping all that background and some of the context in mind, then we will read 1 Thessalonians 1 this week, or the rest of chapter 1. We read just verse 1 last week. So this week, 1 Thessalonians 1, again, keeping in mind Acts 16, Acts 17, 1 Thessalonians 2, 17 through chapter 3. Keep those things in mind. Certainly read those again. But this week, focusing in on the words in 1 Thessalonians 1. Now, this week and in the next 3 weeks, we're going to be focusing around the theme of the first part of this letter, where Paul is celebrating the church's faithfulness. So again, hearing this good report from Timothy that things have been going so well in the midst of adversity, affliction, opposition, he is writing to them and celebrating their faithfulness and praising them for various areas in which they have stayed faithful and remained faithful to the Lord. And so we will see those over the next few weeks and kind of walk slowly through what Paul was saying. Again, hearing in context, hearing what the message was to the church, and hearing it for ourselves today. What are the challenges for us today as we consider this letter? So the way we're going to break it up is 1 Thessalonians 1. We'll look at the first verses 2 to 3, faith, love, and hope. That ought to sound a little bit familiar, those three words, faith, love, and hope, maybe a little different order than we're traditionally used to hearing them here as Paul writes in Thessalonians. But take a look at 1 Corinthians 13, and you'll see maybe how we're more used to hearing them as faith, hope, and love. And so pay attention to what Paul is saying there in verses 2 to 3 about faith, love, and hope. What he says in 1 Corinthians 13 about faith, hope, and love, and see that it's not just that, oh, you've got faith, and oh, I've got faith, oh, I love, we have hope. See what those things, as Paul says, that they produced in the life of the church. Secondly, then, we'll look at the rest of 1 Thessalonians 1 and examine the evidence of faith. I mean, Paul writes there in verse 4, we know, brothers, loved by God, that he has chosen you. Well, how does he know that? He goes on to give some examples of, we're going to name 6 different examples of how he knows that God has chosen them. He can see the evidence of their faith. And then lastly, not only Paul can see it, but those all around that immediate region, and he says just everywhere he goes, the faith that Paul sees in the church in Thessalonica is seen by everyone. The example of their faith we'll look at, and going back into the chapter 1 there, backing up a bit, verses 7 to 9. Take a look at 7 to 9 to see what Paul writes about the example of the faith of those in Thessalonica, and considering the how he says their faith is sounded forth. There's a ripple effect to it, a ripple effect to their belief, their conduct, how they were growing in their faith, how they were facing adversity and affliction. It got me thinking, and as we conclude, we'll think about this together on Sunday. What is the sound of our church? Paul says that the church in Thessalonica, the way in which they've lived their lives for the Lord, has the word, the gospel is sounding forth from them. There's again a ripple effect from it. Makes me think, what's the sound coming from our church? What's the sound coming from our lives? What are the ripple effects of the gospel message that we are proclaiming, preaching, teaching? The ways in which our character and Christian conduct is showing and shining forth. What's another way to say it is, what is the aroma that we're sending off? What are people sniffing, smelling? Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, 14 to 17, take a look at that as we'll look at it at the end, that we are the aroma of Christ and spreading the fragrance of the knowledge of God everywhere that we go. So I always ask the question when I think about that passage is, so if that's the case, then what are people smelling? What are people sniffing? Is it a pleasant odor? Is it a bad odor? So that's what we'll be looking at this Sunday. Again, a decent bit before us. We'll take some time to really dive into the text this week, spend some time preparing and studying the Word of God, going over these passages, praying over them, taking the time that we gather on Sunday morning very seriously. Again, it's just continually it's like a growing frustration for me that it seems that we are so willing to put so much effort, so much preparation, so much intentionality into so many other trivial kinds of things, but yet when it comes to our Sunday morning time with the Lord, it's just kind of well, if we have time and we kind of come in, listen a little bit, leave, and that's it. So really take the time seriously and to listen to and be guided by the Word in our own personal studies, and then certainly corporately as we come together. God bless you guys this week. Looking forward to Sunday as always. God bless you.